computer. Chevron 1 is holding. Chevron 1 is locked in place.
Power output at 23%.
When Stargate arrived in theaters in 1994, few people expected it to become one of the most influential science fiction franchises ever created. Directed by Roland Emmerich and co-written with Dean Devlin, the film introduced audiences to a mysterious ancient gateway capable of transporting people across the galaxy in seconds. It blended archaeology, mythology, military action, and science fiction into a story unlike anything Hollywood had attempted before. Although critics were divided at the time, audiences embraced the film, helping it earn more than $190 million worldwide and laying the foundation for a franchise that would continue for decades through television series, books, and games. But behind the spectacular visual effects and unforgettable adventure lies a collection of fascinating stories that many casual fans have never heard. Some involve incredible production challenges. Others reveal surprising casting decisions, hidden details inside the film, and creative ideas that nearly change the entire story. While internet rumors often exaggerate these moments into wild conspiracies, the real history behind Stargate is every bit as interesting. One of the strangest facts begins with the Stargate itself. Today, the giant circular portal is instantly recognizable, but creating it was far more complicated than simply building a prop. The production team wanted the gate to appear ancient while also looking like advanced alien technology. That balance proved difficult to achieve. Designers spent months developing a look that combined Egyptian-inspired symbols with futuristic engineering. The finished gate measured several meters across and became one of the largest practical sets built specifically for the film. Making it appear functional created another challenge. The swirling blue event horizon audiences remember wasn't physically present during filming. Actors were often looking into an empty circular frame, relying on imagination, while visual effects artists later added the liquid-like portal through computer-generated imagery. In 1994, the technology was still developing, making the Stargate effect one of the movie's most ambitious visual achievements. Another little-known fact concerns the Egyptian language featured throughout the film. Rather than filling scenes with random sounds, the filmmakers worked to create dialogue that felt connected to ancient Egyptian speech. While the language heard in the movie isn't a perfect reconstruction, many words and pronunciations were inspired by real historical research. This attention to detail helped make the fictional civilization feel far more believable than audiences might have realized. The production also invested heavily in practical sets instead of relying entirely on visual effects. Large sections of the desert world known as Abydos were constructed physically, allowing actors to interact naturally with their surroundings. Combined with filming in actual desert locations, these practical environments gave the movie a scale that many science fiction films of the era struggled to achieve. Perhaps the biggest surprise is that Stargate was never originally intended to become a massive television franchise. When Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin created the story, they envisioned it primarily as a feature film, with hopes of expanding into a trilogy if audiences responded positively. The long-running television universe, including Stargate SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe, came later, developed by different creative teams after the original movie proved its lasting popularity. That unexpected expansion transformed a single science fiction adventure into one of television's most successful sci-fi universes. And that's only the beginning, because some of the most surprising secrets behind Stargate, 1994, involve the actors themselves. Along with several casting choices that could have produced a completely different movie. One of the biggest reasons Stargate remains memorable is its cast. Kurt Russell brought confidence and emotional depth to Colonel Jack O'Neill, while James Spader delivered a completely different kind of hero as a brilliant but socially awkward Egyptologist Dr. Daniel Jackson. Together, they created an unlikely partnership that became the heart of the film. But surprisingly, the movie audiences know today almost looked very different. Before Kurt Russell officially accepted the role, the filmmakers reportedly considered several well-known action stars. Because the character was a decorated military officer carrying the emotional burden of a personal tragedy, producers wanted someone who could project toughness while still showing vulnerability. Russell's previous work convinced the filmmakers he could balance both sides of the character, and his performance became one of the film's strongest elements. James Spader also wasn't the obvious choice at first. Unlike the traditional action heroes popular during the early 1990s, Spader was known for playing intelligent, eccentric, and often mysterious characters. That unusual casting decision ultimately worked in the film's favor. Daniel Jackson wasn't supposed to be physically intimidating. He was meant to solve problems through knowledge, curiosity, and determination rather than brute strength. His chemistry with Russell created an entertaining contrast that audiences quickly embraced. Another fascinating story involves Jaye Davidson, who portrayed the mysterious alien ruler Ra. Davidson had very little acting experience before being cast in the role. In fact, he had already gained international attention for his remarkable performance in The Crying Game, but acting wasn't something he planned to pursue as a long-term career. According to interviews over the years, Davidson accepted the role largely because of the opportunity and financial offer rather than a desire to become a Hollywood star. Ironically, one of the movie's most unforgettable performances came from someone who would soon step away from acting almost entirely. Creating Ra's appearance required an impressive combination of elaborate costumes, detailed makeup, and carefully planned visual effects. The filmmakers wanted the character to appear both ancient and otherworldly. His elegant clothing, unusual voice, and supernatural abilities helped establish him as one of the more distinctive science fiction villains of the decade. Then there were the costumes worn by the people of Abydos. Although many viewers assume the wardrobe came directly from historical Egyptian designs, costume artists intentionally blended authentic influences with fictional details. The goal wasn't to recreate ancient Egypt perfectly, but to imagine how a civilization separated from Earth for thousands of years might have evolved while preserving elements of its original culture. The result gave the film a timeless appearance. Viewers recognized the Egyptian inspiration immediately, yet everything still felt unique enough to support the movie's science fiction premise. Filming in desert environments introduced another challenge that rarely appears in behind-the-scenes documentaries. Extreme heat affected both the cast and the equipment. Cameras had to be protected from blowing sand. Costumes became uncomfortable during long shooting days, and maintaining continuity between scenes proved difficult because weather conditions changed constantly. Despite those obstacles, the production team believed real desert landscapes were essential. Artificial studio backdrops simply couldn't recreate the enormous sense of scale they wanted audiences to experience when the team first arrived on Abydos. One detail that many fans overlook appears during repeated viewings. The symbols engraved around the Stargate aren't random decorations. Each glyph represents part of the fictional address system used to connect planets across the galaxy. Although the original film explained only the basic concept, later television series expanded this idea into an entire navigational system, giving each symbol a specific purpose within the Stargate network. That attention to world building became one of the franchise's greatest strengths. But perhaps the strangest fact of all is that several important ideas introduced in the movie were later reinterpreted by the television series, creating noticeable differences between the original film and the expanding Stargate universe. And those changes would spark debates among fans that continue even today to be why the time Stargate reached cinemas in 1994, audiences were focused on the action, the mystery of the ancient portal, and the breathtaking journey to another world. But many of the film's most fascinating details were hiding in plain sight. Some were intentional clues left by the filmmakers, while others became accidental mysteries that fans had debated for decades. One of the most interesting examples involves the design of the Stargate itself. If you watch closely, you'll notice the ring doesn't simply spin for dramatic effect. The rotating symbols represent the process of selecting a destination somewhere else in the galaxy. At the time, the movie explained only a small part of how the system worked. The mechanics remained intentionally mysterious because the filmmakers wanted audiences to feel the same sense of discovery as the characters. Years later, the television series expanded this concept into a detailed system of interstellar navigation, explaining why different planets required unique symbol combinations. While some of those explanations weren't part of the original film, they built naturally upon the foundation established in 1994. Another detail many viewers miss concerns the enormous pyramid where Ra resides. Although the structure appears ancient from the outside, its interior tells a very different story. Hidden behind the stone walls are advanced technologies, metallic corridors, futuristic control rooms, and alien machinery. This visual contrast was deliberate. The filmmakers wanted to show that Ra used familiar Egyptian architecture to disguise highly sophisticated technology. That idea became one of the movie's central themes. What appears ancient isn't always primitive. What seems supernatural may actually be science far beyond human understanding. This approach helped separate Stargate from many earlier science fiction films. Instead of presenting aliens with completely unfamiliar cultures, it suggested that myths from Earth's distant past could have originated from misunderstood encounters with advanced visitors. The visual effects team also deserved credit for creating one of the movie's most memorable illusions. Ra's true alien form appears only briefly, but achieving that transformation required a combination of practical effects, computer graphics, and careful editing. Remember, this was several years before digital effect became routine in Hollywood. Every second of computer-generated imagery demanded significant time and planning. Because of those technical limitations, filmmakers used visual effects strategically rather than constantly. Ironically, that restraint may have made the movie even more effective. By showing less, the film encouraged audiences to imagine more. Another curious fact involves a famous wormhole sequence. The colorful tunnel the characters experience while traveling through the Stargate became one of the film's signature images. However, creating that sequence pushed computer technology to its limits. Rendering only a few seconds of the effect could take many hours using the hardware available in the early 1990s. Today, similar scenes could be created much faster. Back then, they represented cutting-edge visual effects. Perhaps the strangest production mystery involves continuity differences that sharp-eyed fans have noticed over the years. Certain props appear in slightly different positions between shots, costume details occasionally change during action scenes, and some background extras seem to appear in multiple locations. These aren't hidden clues or secret messages. They are simply the kinds of small continuity errors that often occur during large-scale film productions. Rather than hurting the movie, those tiny imperfections have become part of its charm. Dedicated fans still enjoy spotting them during repeat viewings. Then there's the ending. Unlike many modern blockbusters that clearly set up sequels, Stargate concludes with a satisfying ending while still leaving room for future adventures. At the time, no one knew whether audiences would embrace the story enough to support additional films. Instead, something unexpected happened. The movie inspired television producers to imagine an entirely new direction, one that would eventually expand the Stargate universe far beyond what the original creators had placed on screen. That decision would change the franchise forever, and not every fan agreed with every change. Watching Stargate today, it's easy to assume everything came together smoothly. The action flows naturally, the alien world feels convincing, and the performances seem effortless. But behind the cameras, many scenes demanded far more work than audiences ever realized. Take the Stargate activation sequence. For example, every time the massive ring came to life, dozens of departments had to work together with perfect timing. The practical gate had moving components, lighting crews synchronized flashing effects, smoke machines filled the set, and actors had to react to an invisible portal that wouldn't actually exist until months later during post-production. That meant the cast had to imagine what they were seeing. When Kurt Russell or James Spader stared into the glowing event horizon, they were often looking at nothing more than an empty opening surrounded by blue screens or temporary lighting. Their reactions depended entirely on the director's descriptions and their own imagination. It's one reason those scenes still feel surprisingly convincing decades later. Another challenge involved creating the planet Abydos. Although many viewers assume most of the environment was computer-generated, much of what appears on screen was completely real. The production filmed significant portions in the deserts of Arizona, where the vast landscapes closely matched the lonely, ancient world the filmmakers envisioned. Filming there wasn't easy. Temperatures frequently climbed high enough to exhaust both cast and crew. Fine sand found its way into cameras, costumes, and lighting equipment. Windstorms occasionally interrupted filming, forcing production schedules to change with little warning. Yet director Roland Emmerich believed the real environment was worth every inconvenience. He wanted audiences to feel the enormous emptiness surrounding the characters after they stepped through the Stargate. That realism helped separate the movie from many science fiction films of the era, which often relied heavily on indoor studio sets. Another little-known fact involves the movie's impressive miniature work. While modern audiences often assume everything was created digitally, several spacecraft and large-scale exterior shots were produced using carefully built physical models. Before computer-generated imagery became the industry standard, miniature photography remained one of Hollywood's most effective techniques for creating believable science fiction worlds. These models were incredibly detailed. Artists spent weeks adding tiny surface textures, weathering effects, and intricate mechanical features that most viewers would never consciously notice. Those details help convince audiences that the alien technology truly existed. One particularly demanding sequence featured the film's explosions. Safety teams carefully coordinated every blast to ensure actors remained protected while still making the action appear dangerous. Because many explosions were practical rather than digital, there was often only one opportunity to capture the perfect shot. If something went wrong, rebuilding the set could take days. Then there were the costumes. The elaborate clothing worn by Ra and his followers looked magnificent on screen, but many actors later described the outfits as heavy and uncomfortable under the desert sun. Combined with extensive makeup sessions that sometimes lasted several hours, simply preparing for filming became a daily endurance test. Jaye Davidson faced perhaps the greatest challenge. Portraying Ra required not only elaborate costumes, but also maintaining an almost supernatural sense of calm throughout every scene. His quiet, controlled performance contrasted sharply with the explosive action surrounding him, making the character feel even more mysterious. Interestingly, one creative decision almost changed the film completely. Early concept artwork explored several different designs for both the Stargate and Ra's technology. Some versions looked far more mechanical, while others leaned heavily into fancy elements. The filmmakers eventually chose a cleaner, more elegant visual style, one that blended ancient architecture with advanced alien engineering. Looking back, that choice may have been one of the movie's greatest strengths. It gave Stargate a visual identity unlike any other science fiction film released during the 1990s. And yet, despite all of those remarkable achievements, perhaps the biggest surprise came after the movie left theaters. No one could have predicted that a single film would inspire an entire television universe lasting for decades, and even change the way fans view the original story itself. More than 3 decades after its release, Stargate, 1994, remains one of those rare science fiction films that continues attracting new audiences. While many movies from the same era have gradually faded from public memory, Stargate still sparks discussions among fans, filmmakers, and science fiction enthusiasts. What's even stranger is that its greatest legacy wasn't something the original production team fully anticipated. When the movie premiered, Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin hoped it would become the first chapter of a feature film trilogy. They had ideas for where the story could go next, expanding humanity's understanding of the Stargate and the alien civilizations connected to it. However, Hollywood doesn't always follow original plans. Instead of receiving direct theatrical sequels with the same cast, Stargate found new life on television. That unexpected decision changed everything. In 1997, Stargate SG-1 premiered, continuing the basic concept while introducing new characters, new missions, and an ever-expanding mythology. Rather than treating the Stargate as a one-time discovery, the television series imagined what would happen if Earth began using the ancient gateway on a regular basis. It was a bold idea. Few people expected a television adaptation of a single science fiction movie to last for years. Yet that's exactly what happened. Stargate SG-1 eventually became one of the longest-running North American science fiction television series ever produced. It was followed by Stargate Atlantis, Stargate Universe, animated projects, novels, comic books, and video games, creating a franchise that far outlived the original movie's theatrical run. Ironically, some of the biggest fans today first discovered the television series before ever watching the 1994 film. That unusual viewing order has created an interesting debate within the fan community. Some viewers prefer the darker, more mysterious tone of the original movie. Others feel the television series developed the universe in richer and more satisfying ways. Neither opinion is necessarily right or wrong. They simply reflect how dramatically the franchise evolved over time. Another fascinating fact involves the movie's practical effects. Unlike many modern blockbusters that depend almost entirely on digital technology, Stargate relied heavily on physical sets, detailed costumes, miniature models, and carefully planned visual effects. Because of that approach, many scenes still hold up surprisingly well today. Film historians often point out that practical craftsmanship gives older science fiction movies a unique texture that can be difficult to recreate using computer graphics alone. That may explain why Stargate still feels visually distinctive decades after its release. Then there are the hidden references scattered throughout the film. Careful viewers have noticed repeated Egyptian symbols, subtle nods to ancient mythology, and visual clues connecting Earth's history with a fictional alien civilization. While not every fan theory proves correct, the filmmakers clearly enjoyed leaving small details that rewarded repeat viewings. Perhaps the biggest misconception surrounding the movie is the idea that it was overlooked when it first arrived. In reality, while critics offered mixed reviews, audiences strongly supported the film. Its worldwide box office performance demonstrated that there was enormous interest in intelligent science fiction blending history, archaeology, and adventure. Without that commercial success, the television franchise might never have existed. Looking back today, the strangest fact isn't a hidden production secret or an unusual casting decision. It's that a movie many people assumed would remain a standalone adventure eventually became one of science fiction's most enduring universes. The original Stargate introduced a simple but unforgettable question. What if the myths of the ancient world were connected to something far greater than anyone imagined? More than 30 years later, audiences are still asking that same question. That's a true secret behind Stargate, 1994. It wasn't simply a successful science fiction film. It became a gateway to an entire universe of stories that no one, not even its creators, could have fully predicted. And perhaps that's the weirdest fact of all.